I would rather do right than look right. And I think we're in a world right now where a lot of people love to look right without doing anything. One of the reasons that I think so many Black people who are Christians love the Bible is because of the story of the children of Israel.
What I'd like to ask you about is this idea of trust Black women, because that's a narrative we see. We saw Kamala Harris lose the election. We saw Jasmine Crockett lose the election. I married to a Black woman.
That's what to start off with, sir.
So I'm really stepping in it right now.
People have got to know whether or not their president's a crook.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters.
I love the poorly educated.
Are you stupid?
Let me warn you, and let me warn the nation. And so, my fellow Americans,
you've been had. You've been took.
Lisa Galloway defines the mission.
No longer would politics be something that is done to us. Now it is something that we do.
Welcome back to the show, guys. I am so excited to reconnect with, one of the best friends I made in my time in Nashville, Tennessee, an amazing individual who I learned a lot from. In fact, wouldn't be able to have accomplished so much of what I accomplished in Nashville if it wasn't for him, his mentorship, and being willing to take a risk on some strange white Muslim guy named Paul out there trying to do civil rights work. His name is Eric Brown Jr. He's a professional speaker, cultural storyteller, and leadership educator with more than 15 years of experience in community organizing, economic development, and social impact leadership. His work sits, and this is why he's such a perfect guest for my show, at the intersection of storytelling, culture, leadership development, and helping individuals in the different communities reconnect with purpose and to mobilize for meaningful change. He has academic training in religious studies, I believe of a Baptist background, we'll confirm that in a second, and social ethics, and he brings a deep understanding of cultural narratives, faith traditions, and community dynamics, and he does it without promoting one specific belief system. The background he has informs his ability to engage with diverse audiences. We'll put that to the test today in across faith, civic, and professional spaces. Throughout his career, Eric has directed multi-million-dollar initiatives, built cross-sector partnerships, and designed leadership programs that connect personal stories to collective action. He's also the creator of a new initiative called The Belly Rub, a series of experimental storytelling events that use hospitality and dialogue to foster connection and inspire community engagement. He's a Nashville native, has a degree from Vanderbilt Divinity School, and runs a Substack, which is amazing. We're going to connect to it in the show notes, as well as has a pretty awesome book called Weekend Reflections. So enough of the glazing, a little without further ado, we're going to bring in Eric. What's up, man? How you doing?
Oh, how you doing, man? Good to see you again.
Yeah, it has been way, way too long. But I really meant what I said in the introduction. The thing that comes to mind immediately was that full page ad called Nashville United. And that would have never happened without you putting me in touch with so many amazing people, sticking your neck out for this guy you've only had coffee with a few times. And I just wanted to say thank you for, your mentorship, your leadership, and it's been amazing watching your career move. What's the newest stuff that you have going on?
Wow. Well, number one, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So I actually moved to New York City. I'm actually in Brooklyn now. When I first moved here, I was in Harlem. And so a lot of my background I use in a very different way. So I'm not necessarily front-facing in politics anymore. But I definitely do believe that community building is still always a piece of what I do. So I have a few things that I do. One is I work for a Black female bourbon company called Edmund's Honor, which gives honor and talks about the legacy of a gentleman named Edmund Albius. And Edmund Albius was a child botanist that was enslaved. And he was in a town called Bourbon at the time, but it's actually called Reunion. But what he is known for is before Edmund, you could not get vanilla outside of Mexico. The vanilla orchard was only in Mexico. And so A lot of colonialists tried to come over, take it from Mexico, bring it back, and it never worked. And what Edmund did was he used his finger and he used a blade of grass and created this pollination process to be able to cross pollinate into different areas. And because of that, you're able to get vanilla all around the world, specifically in Madagascar, which is really known for its vanilla.
Yeah.
But it was because of the process of Edmund. But like I said, Edmund was enslaved and he was a child. And so you don't hear much about Edmund at all. And so this bourbon company, where this bourbon was created by a woman named Tracy Franklin, a sister, I believe she's originally from Chicago. She now lives in DC. She actually, under Uncle Nearest, if you know the story about Uncle Nearest, the gentleman that taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey, she was in an apprenticeship program with Uncle Nearest, and then she created her own. And she now tells that story through this bourbon called Edmund's Honor. And so I've been working for that company, doing a lot of storytelling, a lot of events with that. And then also I have my own hospitality organization called The Belly Rub, which is more of a pop-up speakeasy that's about cultural immersion to really create very intimate settings to tell stories by way of hospitality. And so that's been going pretty well. I don't do it to get the big crowd. I do it for the people that really are looking for belonging, really looking for community, really looking to stay in the present moment instead of always being on their phones or feeling out of place. This is more of those places where people can really come along, tell their own stories, hear stories, and build everlasting friendships. And so that's really what I've been doing. It's been hard work, especially hard in New York City, but there's not a place like New York City. I love New York City, and I think I'll be here for a little while, and I'm just happy to see the community that I have built and the people I've met and so many of the partnerships and things that I'm doing right now. So I'm very happy about that.
Man, always about connecting people. It's just true to form. As a Muslim, I don't do alcohol, and there's a dry November, right? Is it November that people do dry November?
I think dry January.
There it is, January. That tells you how far out I'm of the culture. But have you ever thought about doing something kind of like that where they have a mocktail belly rub?
So all of my belly rubs have mocktails.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
Yeah. So I always make sure I always have people that don't drink, and I want them to also be included. And so I'll make the drink. It just won't have the spirit inside of it, but it'll still be the same drink. And they'll still have their connections and feels to the community as well. So it still works out.
Right on, right on. So your Substack, man, I got to tell you, you've been pumping out content that's just high quality, provocative, brave, vulnerable, all at the same time. And one that got my eye immediately. And I'm going to start off saying, look, I know this is not my space. So the people are going to come at me, come at me. I don't care. Your piece, They Not Black. I learned a ton from it. But the reason it caught my eye is, the American Muslim community, all the old demographic surveys say that we're about 30% ADOS, descendants of slaves, African descendants of slaves. But recently we've had massive migrant influx. Somalis are all in the news because Trump's a bigot. And, we also have Nigerians just all over, the Horn of Africa, all over Africa, period. Senegalese people, just on and on and on. There's so many Muslims in Africa, from Mansa Musa's history all the way, to now. So I'm thinking it's probably a lot higher percentage, than that 33% of the Muslim community that's Black, quote unquote, whatever that means. And I wanted to just first ask you, what made you write that piece, They Not Black?
Thank you for that question. It's kind of a loaded experience. It's a few things that connected with that. One piece is a friend, which I talk about at the end of that article, that's going through something in the area that I was talking about, to where he made a move for the community because his community, and he's a politician, had been working on some research about a situation that was going on within the community. He'd been working on it for about years. This is his second term, so he's been working on it for about both terms. And there's one piece within this this policy move that he did that affects one particular business person. And the person took that very intentional, instead of more of this politician was really just doing what was best for his community. And because that person garners a lot of audience from that community, he ultimately painted this narrative that the politician was not doing it for Black people within the community, was doing it and trying to push out, gentrify the area to bring in more white people within the community. And if you know the person, that is 100% not true. The people that he's doing it for are Black, and they're doing it because they want to stay within their community. And so it started a very big discussion in that area to make it seem like this guy was a sellout. And what was interesting right now is that most people have now read that legislation and they agree with 95% of it. It's just one piece of that legislation that they might not necessarily agree with, but they agree with 95%. But they were willing to call this man Uncle Tom, and not even understand the historical background of who Uncle Tom is, where this narrative came from about Uncle Tom. Or to even just say that this is really more of a disagreement. This has nothing to do with this man's race or the race of people, beyond the fact that he cares for his community. But they were willing to try to use his identity against him because one person just didn't agree, or a couple of people didn't agree with what's going on. And this is still a big issue within the area. And so that was one part of it. The second part has to do with my own identity, which is I'm originally from Nashville. I'm from Woodbine originally. Most people know me from North Nashville, but I'm from Woodbine, which is Southeast Nashville. And so the background that I come from, being from Southeast Nashville, was it was a very diverse community. It was Black, it was white, it was, and let me go even further, it was working class white, if not lower working class white. It was Mexican. It was those who were Somalian or from Egypt. There was some Nigerians, some Ghanaians that were there as well, Somalians within the area. Laotian, definitely a lot of my friends were Laotian. And because of that, I wasn't necessarily versed only within Black community. My dad's a Black pastor, Black Baptist pastor. My mother is a teacher for daycares, very Christian background, and belonging was always a big thing for me. In one portion, I was not Black enough for the Black people. And in another part, I was too Black for the white people. And so you kind of feel like you're disconnected from the world. And then you would think that the religious identity that I had of being a Baptist Christian would help. But this white Southern Baptist daycare that I went to definitely always made me feel like an outcast there as well. And so this piece was more about identity shouldn't have to be only about, one, a struggle. And that comes from one of my professors, Dr. Victor Anderson. But two, it shouldn't only come from certain aspects that we for lack of a better word, imprison ourselves of thinking this is the only thing that can be Black. Blackness is not only to certain things that we do. It's not to a certain vernacular that we do. Blackness is being a human being, and being a human being to the fullest extent of that. So that was a long way of going to that answer of why I really wrote that, was for them pieces. So me going back to my own personal identity, realizing, one, I'm Hassa Fulani, which is North Nigeria, which from that background, definitely Islamic. A lot of Arabic languages. They were scholars, hardcore scholars. And it's funny that the Atlantic slave trade actually destroyed that identity within my family. So my family, like I said, is very Christian, but why were they Christian? It's a bigger question that we got to ask. And was that more about, just weakening my community? And on my dad's side, being Balanta or from Guinea-Bissau, the name literally means the resistant ones, the ones who rebel. And they were farmers. And so even when we talk about slavery, there's this big thing going around that slavery gave slaves skills. That's not true. They were very intentional about who they grabbed. The people that they enslaved were already farmers. They were scholars when it came to agriculture. So they were very intentional of what they did, because what we know about America already is nobody wants to teach you anything. They want to find the biggest way to get a quick buck off of you. And so they had to be very intentional about who they got. And so that's why I wrote the piece.
Yeah, thank you for that. And one of the things that I wanted you to dig a little deeper in and not give the whole piece away, but the history of Uncle Tom, because I've only known that as someone who's a sellout, someone, right? And just give a real quick overview, and then I have a follow-up question for you about that.
Yeah, so I'll make it quick. So the character Uncle Tom was created by Harriet Beecher Stowe in her book. And this is a person that was definitely against, she was an abolitionist. She was definitely against slavery. And she was in the Bible Belt area, and she wrote a book in the context of letting people see those who were enslaved as humans was the whole purpose. And so in the book, Uncle Tom is not what people assume Uncle Tom is. Uncle Tom is not this person that is against his own people. In fact, he's the opposite. Very caring person, really about those who I'd say are downtrodden on the backs of the poor. And actually, when he in the story, if you haven't read the story, he's considerably pretty much killed for not doing what they wanted him to do to hurt the community of people that were enslaved or downtrodden. So what came from that book is that they actually changed the narrative of who Uncle Tom was, and they have these thing called Time Place. And so Time Place pretty much revised this revisionist history of who Uncle Tom was to make him this very docile character, this very minstrel type character. Really, Uncle Tom turns into what many people know as Sambo.
Yeah.
And so I think we confuse them a lot of times of Uncle Tom and Sambo. We put them in the same category when the reality is Uncle Tom is not Sambo. They are actually opposite. And in a lot of ways, it really talks more about internalized racism within the Black community, if we actually really want to be honest about it. And so that's even more of the focus of when you say the words "they're not Black" or you call somebody an Uncle Tom. What are you really saying? I don't think most people know what they're actually saying within that piece, and it just becomes off more internalized racism from those who really captured us and we're descendants of, to keep us more at war with one another, and to not even think about those who pull the strings.
Man, you just hit on one of my theories of change, and the reason I do this podcast is that, you know, colonizers are just honestly always trying to sow division, and they do it at every single stage. Like one of the things during Black History Month, I was rereading Malcolm X's autobiography, re-listening to his speeches, and what struck me is one of the pivotal moments in my life was reading the portion in his book. I mean, I read the whole book, but when he came back from Hajj, and that actually planted the seed of why I became Muslim much later in life, a decade later.
Wow.
And I watched a lot of the interviews when he first returned from Hajj, and the ability for these white interviewers to make it all about them. He comes back from Hajj, completely transforms his life, and then all they talk about is basically, are white people cool now? It's almost every single interview question. And I wanted to ask you, the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin is a white woman, right?
Right.
Right. So when you're giving that history, what stuck out to me was the entire issue is it's all white imagination, from the original book to the minstrel blackface characters to the dehumanization. And this is exactly, I think, what's happening to the American Muslim community right now. Our diversity is being flattened. We're being racialized. I use that language because they're not allowing for, the tremendous diversity within the American Muslim community. Like, we have every color of person here. We have every language probably in the world spoken in our community. And I just see so much in common with our struggle. But I also see this, like you said, internalized racism. Muslims, right after 9/11, we went on kind of an apology tour. This is not us. We condemn terrorism. And we never spoke forcefully to blowback, or how much of this is Western imperialization, Western adventuralism in Muslim lands. And I wanted to ask you, do you see parallels between the American Muslim experience and the Black experience in America? And what strikes you the most of those kind of parallels?
Man, that's a great question. So let me start off with this. Number one, I think we both share a love for Malcolm X. One of the reasons I became so disciplined in community work was because of after reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, written by Alex Haley and Malcolm X himself. And so it was actually after that book that I really, really became very hardcore and very passionate about community work. And Malcolm X is still somebody to this day that is one of my number one influences for the work that I do. So that's definitely something that we both share together. To get to your question, I want to start off like this, man. One of the reasons that I think so many Black people who are Christians love the Bible is because of the story of the children of Israel. Their journey, their suffering, their struggle, their resiliency, that made a lot of Black folks be able to find their own stories within their story that helped them to continue to keep going further. Think of a pro of some of prose that Marian Williamson says. She says, as we allow our light to shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. I say that going back to your question, because I found my story within Malcolm X's story, though we didn't have the same story. This Muslim man definitely helped me to really see the Blackness within myself even stronger, from a guy that was himself uh, not 100% African American. That was one of his biggest struggles of his mother being interracial.
Yeah.
Him
Detroit
also,
Red, they used to call him because he was light skinned.
they call him Detroit Red because of his light skinnedness. But even telling that story, which is a very unconventional story because it wasn't out of rape, even though the book says that. I actually had talked to his daughter, one of his daughters, and it was actually, which is one of the reasons they had an issue with Spike Lee's movie, the depiction of Malcolm X, which I do love that movie, but they had an issue with his depiction because Malcolm X's mother did not come from rape. She came from a love story between a Grenadian woman and a Grenadian man. One just happened to be white, and one happened to be Black. It was a love story. And she knew her grandmother to this day, even though the movie depicts her as if she was in a mental institution.
Yeah.
And so to go back to your question, I think everybody gathers their story from somebody else that gives them resiliency. One of the stereotypes and issues that I always had when we talk about the Muslim story, and think about that when it comes to the Black story, is that we all understand that gaze of somebody telling you who you're supposed to be, and the world playing on fears being told who that was. To just think about a lot of the stories that were told. And I'll give one story right here of why this is actually important to me. So the first time I actually went out of the country, the second time I went out of the country, because I went when I was younger, I went to London. I was married at the time, and my wife at the time was in London. And I went to go visit her and stayed there for about 2 weeks or so. I went there and then went to Ireland. And while we were there, it was during Ramadan, as the season is now. And we stayed at a Muslim home in London. In the area that I am, this felt very peaceful. It felt very safe. The folks were very loving, very hospitable. As I was talking to the woman that took us in during that time as we stayed in London, she started telling me about ISIS. And then she told me the community that we stayed in was actually the number one recruiting ground for ISIS. And that wasn't the story that got me. What the story that got me while she was talking is that they talk about it as if we're all just happy, as if this is really going to help us. I'm talking about media when I say this part. The media just talked about it like as if Muslims are really just supporting ISIS, ISIL, whatever you call them. And I heard this woman talk about her child and said one of the biggest fears that all of us have in this community here is that one of our kids get recruited. We really care about their safety and their well-being. And so it goes into what Chimamanda Adichie talks about, the tell of the single story, that there's a single story that's being told. And it's told in such a manner that makes a lot of people just assume that this is what the world's supposed to be, and that's not the case. And so I think we have a lot more in common. And reality for me is that though I don't necessarily proscribe to a religion, I'm still very faithful, still really believe in God, and read different literatures of all religions, and still understand my Baptist background. One thing that's always been clear about me is because I never fit in, it really always gives me this form of empathy to understand what a lot of folks are going through and how we keep on giving these depictions and these single stories and beliefs of this is what a particular person tells. While I was also in London, which is very interesting, is that many of the stories that get told in America are so sensationalized that when I read a newspaper in London about a particular story, it was not partisan. It was just telling the facts of the story, and it made me see so many stories in America like, wow, we're really getting fed a lot of crap that we should not be getting fed. because we're so worried about the partisan spin on it to make more money and dollars and to keep people in fear, because that brings in more money, that we can't even see the real story of a lot of things. And so I hope I'm answering your question, but I think more for me is this piece of I really do get annoyed that there's this divide. And I think I talk about this in one of my articles too, that Black folks are not this monolithic community like everybody talks about. But the other part of it too that really bothers me is that just because one Black person says they believe this does not mean the whole group believes this, or that what's the better way for me to say it, that all of our Blackness fits fixed into one box. There's so many different spheres. Like you said, 30% of African descendants of slaves are Muslim. And I actually think the number's probably bigger, like you said. Again, even knowing my background of my mother's side being a very Islamic family, and there's no trace of that in my family's DNA that we know about anymore. So hope I answered your question.
No, you hit on so many important topics that we cover on this channel all the time. Like, I think one of the reasons you coming from Woodbine made us like kind of just immediate friends when we met each other was at 13, I moved out of El Paso, Texas onto an army base, in early 90s, late 80s Germany. And that's a time when basically infantry was just poor people from around the world. So like one of my best friends was from Samoa. Another one was from Philly. Another one was from New York. And I went from like a predominantly Mexican area to like the whole world, One of the first crushes I ever had was on a girl from Guam. It's like all of this craziness. And the idea, like back then, what was so interesting was I never really fit in, especially in my El Paso time, because my mom's Mexican, but I'm very white presenting, right? And so going into this really diverse environment and then trying to like understand, do I fit in with the Latinos here? Do I fit in with the white people here? And then the cool thing about an army base is that, with the kids, at least, it really cared more about like what you were into. Like, so if you were a skater, if you were into football, whatever, there was not enough kids around to not have friends that were different than you, because it's this little tiny small town and you're just forced into the same school. But what you hit on that I think was so profound, and it brings me to a lot of things you said, but one of the things I wanted to talk about was your article on Jesse Jackson. And you talked about how that Malcolm X made you really kind of embrace your Blackness. And your article is titled, let me make sure I get this right, I couldn't stand Jesse Jackson, and then I grew up. Right. Then I got older. And what I love about that is with his passing, I had a huge critique of Jesse Jackson. And my critique was that the Rainbow Push Coalition essentially ended up just relying on shame, that it would force bigots and racists underground because of the power of calling someone a bad name in their public, and that didn't confront their views. It didn't make them reform. And for me, that set up Trumpism, right? So Obama and the audacity of hope and the first Black president, then you had to go from, like I think it was LBJ who said, if you can convince the worst white man that he's superior to the best Black person, that not only will you won't have to pick his pocket, but he'll give you his money. So we went from an amazing, at least rhetorically, an incredibly intelligent leader who's Black to, this guy we have in office now for the second time. And so what I found really interesting about your piece was kind of reflected when I went back and learned the I Am Somebody, speech and poem that Jesse Jackson put together. And it also made me have a new appreciation for him, because I was looking at him purely through tactics. And you talked about how, and I don't want to say it wrong, so correct me here, but that you kind of viewed his early activism as a bit performative, playing into his Blackness. And then you realized over time that created space for so many things. Did I misrepresent what you're saying? And can you dig a little deeper on that?
No, you didn't. I really was not necessarily the biggest Jesse Jackson fan. I was definitely a Dr. Martin Luther King fan, a John Lewis fan, but not necessarily a Jesse Jackson fan. It did seem very performative, and I think what it reminded me of is that you have to also be aware that at one time I was in ministry, and so it's very easy to see the preachers and pastors that you know are not really about the work. They're not really about the people. They're not really about the business, and they're usually very good. I like how one of my friends says it: pastor, pimp, politician. That they all have something in common. They have a lot in common based on certain jokes, but the biggest piece is that they really do have a gift of gab, and are able to use it in a way that can either be helpful for the community or very manipulative to the community. And Jesse always had that. He always had a very profound way of words, that I think he could really, sell ice to an Eskimo. But when I saw him a lot of times, it felt very fake. And so for me, that moment that I saw him at the A. Philip Randolph Institute to speak, I didn't really get too close to him. He spoke to the youth. He did exactly what he was supposed to do, and I think he actually was being very sincere. But for me, it just always felt like I thought about different things that he was doing to speak, and he was shaming, just kind of like you were saying, for the purpose of getting dollars and getting money. I don't think that part is partially wrong, but I think my thought process of his intention was wrong. I think in my head more was he's just about the money instead of he's about the money to help out his community and help out in certain ways. It might benefit him. But I think more in my head, it just felt like he was a sellout. And I have to think about that a little deeper in a few ways. Because if I think about the civil rights movement, Malcolm Gladwell talks about that in one of his books where the organizers of civil rights movement definitely tried to exploit their pain on purpose because they knew that if they could show their pain within the media, there's no way that you could deny that it actually happened. And so there was a story of one kid that was getting bit by a dog. At least in the picture, it looks like he's getting bit by a dog and getting attacked. And it hit the newspaper as far as the picture. But the reality actually is that he understood dogs very well. He had gripped this dog to the point that this dog could never hurt him. But what you are seeing is a dog that's lunging at him while he's also gripping this dog, to where people are seeing they're setting dogs on the black people or the Negroes probably at that time. And it hit very quickly to where people was like, this is a travesty. We have to do something about this. And I've heard William Barber talk about this a lot of really exploiting those particular issues because it can make the bigger lens for people to understand the issue. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I actually think it's very strategic.
Yeah.
But sometimes that can get that's a snowball effect, right? And I think that I felt that by the time that Jesse was doing this, it was a big snowball that really was creating a landslide in a lot of ways. But Jesse did so many great things. I mean, he was really connected to at least the Nation of Islam community. I think the Muslim community in general. He was very always inclusive when it came to faith. He was a learned man. He really did have the degrees. He understood things. Even some of his mess ups with the Jewish community at the time, he was apologetic about that. And honestly, that's one of the qualities that I do respect about Jesse Jackson is when Jesse Jackson was wrong. When Reverend Jesse Jackson was wrong, he did something that I think is very hard for a lot of people to do this day, is admit wrong and try to do better from it. And so, no, I've definitely have changed my thought process about him. I don't think there would be an Obama as far as president if it wasn't for Jesse Jackson. Somebody had to take the L. Somebody had to go out there and show who they were. And regardless of how you might have felt about Jesse, you couldn't say that Jesse couldn't speak, that Jesse didn't understand the issues. You just may not want him to be him because he may not have been polishing it. But you don't get an Obama without a Jesse Jackson, and I don't think you get a lot of politicians that black folks that were even able to even know that they could run for office if not for a Jesse Jackson. So I have to give him his props. Yeah, there's certain things I disagree with him on, but no, that man did a lot of stuff, and I think he, just like the ones before him, he really did stay within a particular tradition, particularly when it comes to the Black Baptist preacher. To do some things that really did help out the people, regardless if you agree or not. And at the end of the day, the honest truth is that there's nobody that has ever done this flawlessly and done this perfection-wise. In some way, shape, or form, we have our mess ups, our slip ups, but it doesn't stop that work can still be done for behalf of the community.
Yeah, one of the things as a Muslim that I resonate with that so much is that in our creation story, it's a little different than the Christian creation story. For us, it says if God wanted us to be perfect, he would have made us like angels. You could kind of think of angels in Islamic theology as kind of like righteous AI. You know, they have intelligence, but their free will is limited. They can only obey God. And so humans have the ability to disobey God through free will. And it actually said, the prophet once, peace be upon him, said that if all of mankind was to stop sinning, that he would replace those people, put them in heaven with people who would sin. And then, you know, he was asked, you know, why? And then he said the most beautiful thing a person can offer his creator is sincere repentance. And that's why what you said about Jesse Jackson resonates with me so much, where you said he apologized when he made mistakes, which is like the polar opposite of Trump. And I wanted to say, before I ask you this question, that I don't think we would have Mamdani, you're in New York, without Jesse Jackson. Because if you look at Jesse Jackson's presidential runs, he was undermined by his own party. The exact same way that Hakeem Jeffries wouldn't endorse Mamdani, and the establishment Democrats, you know, these corporate sellouts, are there trying to maintain power and have many of the same donors, many of the same financial backers as the Republicans do. And they were undermining a real populist leader. So the question I wanted to ask you is kind of getting back into this, I guess, what is Blackness motif. When Michelle Obama said, "When they go low, we go high," everybody mocked her for it because it kind of felt like she was missing the moment. And what people aren't mocking her for is she was on an interview a few months back with Diana Ross's child. I forget her name. The actress.
Tracy.
Yeah, Tracy Ross. And Tracy asked her, are you going to run for president? And then Michelle Obama was like, girl, don't even waste my time. We saw what they did to Kamala Harris. And it's funny, right? But like, someone's literally putting their hope for the future in you, and you're giving them an attitude of don't waste my time.
Well, as we saw in this past election, sadly, we ain't ready. That's why I'm like, don't even look at me about running, because you all are lying. You're not ready for a woman. You are not. So don't waste my time. You know, we got a lot of growing up to do. And there's still, sadly, a lot of men who do not feel like they can be led by a woman, and we saw it. What was the question?
I wish that she would have stuck with the "when they go low, we go high." And I know I'm disconnecting with my audience right now, but Trumpism has gave you Gavin Newsom, which is just a white, skinny, better looking, more intelligent Trump, right? It's the exact same race to the bottom with division. So what I wanted to ask you is, can you reflect a little bit on that? Because you've always been someone who's been able to bring people from all kinds of different backgrounds together, but I think you keep your eye on the prize, on where real injustice sits. So am I sparking any thoughts in your brain?
Yeah, you are. And you brought up a lot of points that I could go with. But let me start with this first piece. I'm trained as a community organizer, which means that it's not, and I'm trained under the Chicago model of community organizing. And so it's not this, there's not permanent friends, there's not permanent enemies, there's permanent interest. And the interest is for the purpose.
I don't want to interrupt. I just want to say thank you for that, because that's another pillar of the activism that I do, is you can't have entangling alliances, and you shouldn't expect quid pro quo activism. It should be you stand for what you stand for, and you force multiply whenever you can.
A lot of my friends don't agree with me, and I don't agree with them. And they're still my friends. But when it's time to go to war, it's time to go to war. And it's not personal. It's more of, I have to do what's best for me and my community, and they got to do what's best for them and their community. And it is what it is. But I say that because I really get annoyed, which I think this is going to get at the heart of the matter, what I think you're talking about. I really am tired of the politician savior complex.
Yes.
And I think that is something that really, truly annoys me. So I'll take the hit for this one. I did a lot of political organizing work when Obama was running the first time to win. And though I voted for Obama, there was people that was talking about they was in the streets crying, laughing, having a good time after he won. I went to sleep. The moment I voted, the moment that I got done with the work that I did, I went home and went to sleep. I never necessarily looked at it as and this might be wrong, but I never looked at it as this big joyous moment. I looked at it more as we got somebody that I think is closer to my views, and I'm very clear that he's not. But I also think he still is probably the best president in my time of life. But there's a lot of things I didn't agree with Obama. I mean, one of the biggest things, and I mean, people still don't want to believe this fact check to this day, is that nobody has deported more immigrants than Obama to this day. Trump still has not hit that yet. And so I know that so many of us who are Black want to support him and take up for him, and I understand why we do that. And that's because Obama was put in a situation to where it didn't matter if he did right or wrong, it would always be wrong. And after a while, you get tired, and because you understand that piece of, they make it seem as if being Black by itself is wrong, that you have to take up and defend him for that. And I have no issue with that. But I can't pretend 100% like Obama was everything that I wanted. Yes, he's more than what Trump is and all those different things. But I mean, the thing that people still want to talk about is Obama was still neoliberal. And I didn't say liberal, I said neoliberal. He still was probably way more closer to moderate Democrat than he was to those who consider themselves progressive, which is what I do. After he got out of office, there was this big thing for Biden. After we saw what Trump did, which many of us knew that Trump was going to do, and people were so ready to jump for Biden, and I'm still was not really happy with Biden in a lot of different things. There were some things that I thought he did that was helpful around transportation infrastructure that really should have been able to go towards Black and brown communities. I don't think they went all the way, but there were some things that I thought that was helpful. But the other things that I didn't like about Biden was he made all these promises about hiring a lot of Black folks to be in the White House, but we still did not even talk about their economical conditions, that many of them left out of office or resigned within a year after getting in the office, because one, they couldn't afford to live in DC. There were still things that were set up structurally that still did not help them to be able to stay in the White House. And so they ended up having to leave. So we'll go with that. Mandabi, I voted for him. But like everybody else, I'm still very, and I think this is from my time working in politics, putting people in office. And I say this for this reasons because I helped put a lot of people in office, and I've saw people that told me their idealism of what they wanted to do when they would run or what they was going to do for the community and how much they hated gatekeepers. They are now the present day gatekeepers. Yep. And the things that they were so mad about with those who are older than them they're now doing to other people, talking about wait your turn. And that's interesting to me to hear them say that. And so with Mandabi, I think my views probably do line up with him more than a lot of folks. I'm still a very pragmatic progressive, and I want to make sure I say that. I really get tired of, not that I have issues with idolism. I have an issue with idolism that really comes off as virtual signaling. You just don't want to look wrong. Yeah. And because you don't want to look wrong, you won't make any moves. You just say the right things that makes people feel better about themselves, but you still have done nothing. And I'm very clear with my progressive views, definitely being about Black liberalism, is that I would rather do right than look right. And I think we're in a world right now where a lot of people love to look right without doing anything instead of actually doing what's best for our community, which may not come off as agreeable to everybody else because you made a decision, but a decision had to be made. And so Mandabi, what I will definitely say right now is Mandabi's doing some things that I really am appreciating. I have nothing against him.
You like the Sharia law? You like the Sharia law he's laying down in New York? I'm just kidding. It's the Republican narrative. He's not doing anything like that, of course. But
got you. I think Mandabi really is working for the people right now, and he's proven it by even some things that I think that I would wish a lot of other people would do. He's actually working with Trump, and he's not doing it from a manner of, I did this for you, so it means I'm on your side. No, he's doing what I expect a politician to do, which is I care about the city of New York. And because of that, I'm going to go see you in DC, and I'm going to make some type of negotiation with you so that we can do what's best for one another, which is what politics is about. Politics is truly about the organization of people. It is to say that there's some things that you may not agree with. There's some things that I may not agree with. But if we're going to live here safely, we have to work through together to make sure that all our community is taken care of and done. And that's not what's happening to me in DC right now. What's happening in DC is a lot of people that say words that looks like they're against each other, then they go have dinner afterwards, and things are still not done, and people are still dying, and it's annoying to me, and that's probably one of the reasons I've kind of faded away from politics from that standpoint, doing things more underground. But I'm really annoyed with that state. And so when we talk about that with Michelle, with what you're saying, I necessarily did not take what Michelle said as uh, uh, hurtful or insulting to Tracy Ellis Ross. I understood her point. She understood the stress that her husband went through for 8 years, because she went through that stress with her husband for 8 years, and now that will become her stress. And it goes back to the narrative, or the real issue of Black women always having to put things on their back to get things done. Even when they don't have the title, they get things done. Now you want to give them the title, and you want to do it with a house that's burning that's burning down.
You could be you on my podcast, man. It's cool.
I just want to make sure. Well, I'm gonna say it, burning the fuck down, and now we want to give it to a Black woman to solve. And I just don't think that that's right. And I think she knows better, and she wants to live her life out very peacefully within that peace. And so I agree. Now, where I will go with this also too is that when it comes to Black community and politicians, that's always a weird situation too, because in one regard, you have to remember that a lot of Black folks did not have representation at all. They had other people telling them what to do, right? So people talk about Kamala a lot, and they have issues with what Kamala had done. They'll talk about her when she was the California State DA, and talk about she put a lot of people in prison. I would say more her office did, and she just allowed her office to do certain things. And of course, at the end of the day, she's the biggest decision maker. But I also know some of the things that she did for those who were victims in sexual crimes. Are we going to also say, we always like to talk about restorative justice, but I think restorative justice still means that we have to address the harm that happened. And I think sometimes, too many people, especially on the progressive or on the left, like to use that word in a manner of, we just tell somebody don't do it again, instead of, no, we need to acknowledge the harm that happened. And so I'll leave you with this story for this question, especially when it comes to Kamala. I was talking to well, she was actually the DA, not the DA. She was the public defender in Nashville, and I won't say which one. And I remember there was a person that was running for a judge seat that I didn't necessarily think was qualified, but they were Black, and they had the credentials enough to do it. And so I remember talking to this public defender and saying, I just don't think that that's the best representation of us, of this person running for this office. There's way more qualified people. And the person stopped, looked at me, and the person was not Black, by the way. And the person stopped and looked at me, and what she said was that, well, Eric, I get you and I understand what you're saying, but we've had a lot of mediocre white men that are actually not even mediocre, subpar white men as judges that have done a lot of harm to our community for over 50 and 60 years. And so it's funny that now we want to have a critique of somebody that actually does care and can make a better regard. I don't think they'll do any more harm than the 50 or 60 years that we've already went through. And I say that because I understand that many people, and I'm one of those people, I don't like to vote the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
But I also, at the end of the day, am very pragmatic and strategic enough to say that it doesn't matter who you put in office. The job of you being in office is not that I like you. The job of you being in office is you're going to do what the hell I want you to do. And if not, we're going to get you out and put somebody else in there. So it doesn't matter if you're Republican. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're Trump. It doesn't matter if you're Harris. What it does mean for me is that we have enough power that's organized to say that we need you to do this. And I don't, again, organize. This goes back with, it doesn't matter if we, for me, it's always going to be about not permanent friends, permanent enemies, permanent interests. And that's the way I like to think about politics from that standpoint. So that was a long way to just say the piece of, it's not always about the person. It's about my interest and what power I have behind me to make sure that you do with my interests.
What I'd like to ask you about is this idea of trust Black women, because that's a narrative we see. We saw Kamala Harris lose the election. We saw Jasmine Crockett lose the election. married to a black woman. You
No,
know,
that's start off with, sir.
so I'm really stepping in it right now. But my point here is that I think when Kamala lost, it's because of a number of factors, like supporting the genocide, like not differentiating herself from Biden. And then when Jasmine Crockett lost, I think there's similar problems, and I think there's a pattern here. And when I hear, and a mutual friend of ours, Michelle Steele, the professor from mine at Lipscomb, she posted when Trump won this big image of a bunch of black women on rooftops watching the country burn, just drinking tea. And where I was going to go with this is, for me, when I hear trust black women, I'm thinking Summer Lee, I'm thinking Nina Turner, I'm thinking people whose, legislative history and public record have been very much about policy, very much about uplifting, marginalized people. And I think that this idea of race, identity, femininity, black women is being weaponized in a way that's inappropriate. And I think that it also ties into your article, I Have No Flag to Wave. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that.
Okay. There's a lot of nuance with that. When we say, this is the problem, I think a lot of times when we talk about cliches or phrases that catch on very quickly, is that we think that we have to take away common sense or nuance in that. When I hear trust black women, I don't think of it from a standpoint of I have to trust this, or let's get to your point of what I think you're hitting on, is that it means trust all black women. I think there's a bigger narrative that's happening, which is, what do we trust black women for, and what do we not trust black women for? So in a lot of ways, I think historically, black women are always looked at as servitude. They're always looked at as those who will clean up after us, clean up our messes after us, take care of our children, take care of all the things. They make us feel good about ourselves. They're the people that's behind us that makes us look good on the front. Yeah. Instead of the piece of, why can't black women be in the forefront and actually acknowledge, and we show the work that they're already doing in right now. That doesn't always have to have them in the back or in the side. Like even when I hear people say things of, she's the woman behind me. Why does she have to be the woman behind you? Why can't she be the woman beside you? And sometimes the reality is, why can't she be the woman that's in front of us? That's really helping us with these pieces. So I think I want to say that first. I think I am annoyed by how we use identity politics and language in a lot of ways to mean that we need to turn our brains off. And I don't think that's what the statement's saying at all when we say trust black women. What I do believe, though, is that there are many of black women that are not trusted, that are doing great work that need to be trusted, because you trust them as long as they're behind the scenes, but you don't trust them when they're in the front. And we need to get over that. Two, I don't need anybody to be perfect, like I said earlier, when it comes to stuff. So I don't need to necessarily call out names or say this particular person or this particular person over this person. Again, I don't really necessarily have an issue with Kamala, more than I don't always agree with her politics. And in this race, she definitely had my vote over Trump any day of the week. If we talk about why she lost, I'm going to say the number one reason why she lost: white women. White women is the reason that she lost.
Ironically,
women, Jewish,
white women are also the biggest benefactors of DEI.
Correct.
Which is crazy.
That's the bigger thing that needs to be discussed and talked about if we look at those numbers, is that white women trust white men more than they trust anybody else, even though at the same time still wanting people to acknowledge them as women. And with that being said, they still want they want to have their cake and eat it too, which is the point I think you're getting at when you talk about the DEI factors. When we talk about DEI, we talk about these businesses a lot. It's a white man that has a business. And then we'll talk about, well, we want to use DEI work, and it's usually a white woman that still has the backing of her white man that still gets all these dollars, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's the number one reason why she lost. Yeah, I know plenty of people that were not going to vote for her that looked exactly like me. We discussed that, and that's fine. And that's a different conversation to have about, for me, the Democratic Party, which I think you kind of hit at earlier. It's because the Democratic Party, again, is one of, I have issues saying it a lot of times that I can support all the things of the Democratic Party, because I think, again, they do use the division and the schisms to their favor to put in place. One thing right now, when we talk about Jasmine Crockett, within that election, and I know there's a bigger context, is how helpful were they for either side? Did they stay out of it for the primary? I don't know that answer. But what I do know is that if it is very true that the poll should have been open till 9 o'clock,
Yes,
I do have a problem with that piece, right?
me too.
I do know about the other gentleman. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but
Tallarico.
Tallarico. I do know about how he uses his rhetoric very well, particularly from a faith background, to really talk about Christian nationalism. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was in the race first, from what I'm being told. So I don't necessarily have a dog in that fight. Let the best person win if it was the best person and if the rules were set for that to happen. I do know that it's something very interesting to me that when it's coming to black, not only women but black men too, but particularly black women, that we're seeing these races where they're putting a lot of money to not make sure that they can win. That's interesting to me. That's where I get at the question of trust black women.
Yeah.
That y'all are spending millions of dollars on primaries. APOC put all this money behind the Corey, against Corey, I forgot her last name, in Corey Bush in Missouri. Same thing with Jasmine's racist going on. And I think that's the bigger question that gets hit on when we talk about trust black women. And I think the other thing too, of pitting black women against each other, which is why I don't really want to necessarily do the part of the naming piece of, well, why this black woman and not that black woman? I think that's something that I don't ever really hear within white communities of, why not this white person over that one? That's just something that always happens, and I think minority bothers me.
Yeah.
I'll stop there with that one because I think I'm going on.
No, this is fascinating because I just dropped a piece that came out today because the race concluded and Tallarico won. He got 52% and Crockett got 46%. And in Tallarico's acceptance speech, he did criticize the poll closing issues. The thing is, with Crockett's race in particular, I think she was targeted because she's an outspoken and she was effective as a black woman. And I think Cori Bush, the same reason. I think, when black women speak, they often do have a moral authority that other people don't have just because of who they are. And especially with vulnerable communities that normally don't vote in mass. So they have this motivation factor. That's why I think AIPAC went after Cori Bush so hard. But with Crockett, I think the problem was she was set up, and I have the receipts in my piece. There's an article where the Republicans wanted to use her as an avatar for the midterms, and she wasn't considering to run. That's why when you said she entered the race late, it's true. They set up a phone banking and text message campaign where they targeted high propensity Democrat voters and her fan base, and basically it's like, why is she not in the race? And then the text message literally said, click here to send her office a message. So she started seeing these polls and she started getting messaging from her office. You need to enter the race. And the Republicans did it because she's a black woman and it's Texas. So they thought they could win the Senate seat and then use her as an avatar to fundraise across the nation, being like, this is what the Democrats are. And, bad built beach blonde butch body only goes so far, for so long, even though it's like probably the moment that sparked 1,000 memes. But I'm going in on this because you're hitting on something that I think is so important. It was, to me, really interesting. You said that when it's black women, they can say which one or which policies, right? And for me, like the reason I align with like a Summer Ali is because she's been about the policies I like forever. She's been critical of the settler colonialism in Gaza and the West Bank, from day one. Cori Bush, the same. And I don't agree with them on a lot of things because like you, I don't know if you identify as a Democrat. I've always been a political independent. I used to flirt with libertarianism because I care more about civil liberties than really, that's kind of my true north in American politics. But where I'm going with this is you wrote this great piece where you talked about ontology and love. And you kind of were maybe criticizing a friend's ontological framework. And if I understood it right, you were talking about the transformable power of love and being loved. How does that in your mind apply to the realm of civic engagement right now?
Help me remember which article that was, man. I've been writing a lot. And I've really been having these other ideas about love right now. So
let's go to your most recent ideas, because one of the things that Malcolm X talked about was when they called him a hate preacher because he was preaching, like by any means necessary. And one of the best quotes, I don't know if it's fictionalized in the movie because it wasn't in his autobiography by Alex Haley, but I'm pretty sure I saw it as one of his televised interview clips that you can check, where he says, they call us hate preaching, but no, this is love preaching because you love yourself. And so I want to get to this idea and kind of close out on, because I've been using a lot of your time, and thank you for accommodating my schedule. I want to get to this idea of political tribalism, this kind of, I think we're in a moment where it's extreme. And how do we balance self-love, love overall, as like, we could transition to your piece where you say you have no flag to wave, and then what it means to be American.
That's good, man. I think I'm going to still stick with my same response of no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, permanent interest.
Yeah,
and a lot of that comes from the piece of this love within yourself, understanding who you are, understanding your identity. And I'll just use my own personal narrative again. I came from a very diverse neighborhood. After that, I moved to Murfreesboro, Tennessee for my high school years. And that was when I think I was really pushed. Well, even a little bit before then, I was definitely really pushed on staying with your own people. And why that meant something even more important to me when at first I didn't never really think I had my own people. And even now, it wasn't until coming to New York that I would probably fully say now that I think I've found my people. And so I've always, even in Nashville, and even with many people that would say that they loved me, that they really connected to me, and I was semi-popular there, I never really felt like I belonged. I just love Nashville. I love North Nashville, and I wanted to be there. And so the political tribalism, why it's annoying to me, is that I think both sides suck. I'm really tired of this two-party system. I think we definitely need more than two parties that keep dominating what's going on. It's really annoying. I think we need to get to the point of 4 or 5 different parties, because right now none of them really. I feel that I am identified with. I just wrote this piece that came out today called the Frank Power, where I talk about Frank Luntz, who was a conservative rhetorician, or really he was he did a lot of the data for the Republican Party. He was really good at it.
I have his book on the shelf right here. It's called Words That Work. It's fantastic.
Words That Work, is a fantastic book. But even me and you being able to talk about that with some people that have even said that we have that book. Oh, so you're Republican instead of the piece of Frank Luntz makes a very great point with that book of telling us that if I say the word family, what do you think in your head? If I say the word marriage, what do you think in your head? And they're not thinking from a lot of my friends' perspective when they say family. They're thinking, a mother, a father, or we can say a man, a woman, and 2.5 kids. When I know many of my friends' families was a mother, Uncle Paul, auntie, a bunch of cousins who were my brothers. They didn't think of that as family. They think of it the other way. If we say marriage, it's not within the context of what we talk about. It's just a man and a woman. And so when you say those words, people already have pictures in their head of what they're discussing and talking about. And I really get annoyed that I cannot talk about issues, because if I talk about an issue that I agree about, or an idea that I talk about that I agree about, out of whose mouth it comes from, somebody can't even understand or fathom the idea of what's being said is right, because they're worried about the person that said it. And I want us to get out of that. The second piece for me, again, like I said, man, is I'm really trying to figure out myself and what love looks like for me. I'm a person that, like I said, I've come out of a very Baptist family background. I don't necessarily profess Christianity anymore in that particular type of way. I do like Jesus. I never really looked at Jesus as God. Always been the Son of God to me. I don't necessarily believe in inherent evil with Adam and Eve. That story does not necessarily fit well with me, what I believe. But I definitely do believe in the power of Jesus. I really do believe when you talked about angels, I think about the Greek word angelos, messenger. I think about that very strong core, hard core. That's something that really means something to me. I'm really ancestral based. So even though My ancestors may not necessarily be here physically. I still think they're with me everywhere I go, and I use that as my inspiration, my affirmation before I walk into any. Even talking to you right now, Paul, the reality is that I keep in the back of my head, my ancestors are with me, which is why I have the confidence to be able to even talk to you right now. So when we talk about this tribalism piece, I'm really, for a person that just now feels that he's found his tribe. And my tribe, even when I say that, is very diverse. There's still a bunch of different tribes that just happen to connect at certain ends with other areas. That's how I look at it. And I think being in New York and outside of the Bible Belt now has even helped me even more to be free in that idea and language of what it is that I believe. And so I really want us, one, to be very to get back to the pragmatism when it comes to things. I'm really, again, use idealism right, but I'm really tired of people giving me this vision of something that they know they're never going to work on. That's annoying. Yeah. Two, if you're going to talk about things that really bother people, you're going to have to make a decision, which means you're actually going to have to do something. When I think we're in a culture right now where we have taught people, I think it's been done by school, that we've done this over communication of things to where we have to give everybody the right answer. We have to make sure everybody participates in the sense of giving them a ribbon, making them feel good about themselves, that people don't make decisions unless somebody else hands it to them. And we're not living in that type of world right now. We're living in a world where you better figure out how to get stuff done. And if not, we're going to stay in the same place, or it's going to be worse. And that's how you end up with a Trump in office. The other piece is that we need to get back to being okay with disagreements within community. I am very big on peace. I am very big on, if something crosses my boundary, I'm not going to deal with it. But I'm also very big on right now these days of dealing with conflict. And I think I've always dealt with conflict, but I definitely am being more big on dealing with conflict and not hiding who I am as a person to make you look to look nice instead of actually getting things done. When people talk about the word nice, I always tell them to look up the etymology of the word nice. It did not start off the way you think it means. It almost comes off in a way of you were ignorant, you were stupid, you were bashful.
Nashville nice.
Interaction. Right. That Nashville has always been known to me. Why I love New York so much is that people are very kind in New York while also being very direct in a lot of things that need to get done. And so I really want us to get back to stop being afraid of conflict. And then also the last piece is I'm not going to hide who I am with my identity of my fullness of who I am as a person to make you feel good. Why do I have to shrink and be small for the purpose of you feeling better about who you are? I'm very clear that if you think 1 + 1 is 5, I'm going to let you think 1 + 1 is 5 because I like peace. But what I'm not going to do is, Eric, I need you to quote that 1 + 1 is 5 because you agree with me. I'm going to look at you and say, Eric believes 1 + 1 is 2. And that's not going to change. Because I'm not going to devalue myself to make you feel good, because there's no way that I can make somebody else feel good about themselves while continually making myself feel horrible. And so I think if we get out of real true tribalism, is that I really do think we got to get back to the spirit of Ubuntu I am because we are, which I think is definitely being lost in a lot of different ways because we were told so much what to do by certain people that still means that we need to disconnect from our communities and disconnect from the ancestral wisdom that we have. No, we need to get back to that. We need to understand our ground, and we understand our identity within our people. And then from that, be okay with who we are because we were shaped by that, and still be able to have the critical thinking, the critical processing to understand the difference, but stand on that and stop running from that because we're trying to appease somebody and really feel free in who we are as people. And I just think right now that we have a lot of this happening because of the not only social conditions, but the social characters that we continue to play within this war of what is going on that we can't even really tell. Like, the fact that we're still talking, I'm sorry, I don't give a shit about the Epstein files. I don't. We know what's going on. We know that they're hiding stuff. We keep fighting that part, but this man is consistently doing war after war after war, or he'll put a picture up of the Obamas as apes, and we'll fight about that we're still not seeing what's in front of us. And that's just becoming very annoying to me that really, y'all, I just want us to get back to, are my people dying? Do they have health care? What are the things that's going to keep communities sustainable and make sure that they have the quality needs that they have in life?
You know, I almost don't want to ask another question because I think that's almost the perfect way to end. But there is one thing I wanted to go back to that you brought up. But first, I want to thank you for how you navigated this idea of political tribalism versus finding your tribe and your identity. One of the things that you helped me understand at a deeper level is like when my wife and I are raising our son, one of the things she always says, or to our daughters as well, that she says to them is, you enjoy freedoms and privilege that your ancestors never had. And for the sake of your ancestors, you should be, there's a concept in Islam called ahsan, which means to worship God as if you know he sees you. Right? So like you're going to do everything excellent. It's almost like Zen, that when you draw the arrow and you put it into the bow, you're doing everything with perfection. So you don't care about hitting the target because what you've done is exponentially increase the ability to hit the target by the process being perfect. And I love the way you broke that down. And I think it leads to the last question I actually wanted to ask you. And this is just one of those things where it's like reaffirming of faith, because how conversations or events in our lives go full circle, it's not by accident, I don't think. I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned earlier about seeing people that you helped get into office or the campaigns that you've been tangential to or been core to, where they complain about gatekeepers, they complain about people holding down the youth and not doing progress. And then they themselves become the gatekeeper once they hit the seat. And I think gatekeeping is one of the biggest problems we have when it comes to civic life. And it reminds me, and I know you're a hip hop head. I think I'm a bit older, so my generation of hip hop is like Public Enemy up to Gangstar and Guru. I fall off there. Kanye was like upcoming with Through the Wire when I was dropping out of the whole scene, right? So I'm old. But Public Enemy once said, I have to be mindful that I don't become who I hate. It was one of the best lyrics I ever heard. And then if you remember Paris, the Black Panther rapper from back in the day, he had a line that said, who's to blame for the hate that hate made? And those two lyrics always resonate with me because I see so many times where communities based on reactionaryism or based on identity end up becoming exactly like the thing that they were fighting against. So I wanted to close off giving you that thought to react to. And then just since I don't know what I don't know, anything you wanted to say, if nothing else, just let us know where we can find you online.
Sure. Yeah, those are great quotes. I'll take it back to me, man. When I was definitely in politics and working in the mayor's office in Nashville, one of the things, well, let me start this way, because 2 days ago was March 3rd. And March 3rd is a very significant day for me all around, but I'll talk about the main one. March 3rd, 2020, Nashville was hit with a tornado that really devastated the whole communities, particularly North Nashville, which is where I claim is home, even though I told you I'm from Woodbine. But North Nashville is definitely where I had my anchor at. And it was very funny about that because that was also an election day. that was one of the primary elections of a lot of stuff. And so the tornado really harmed a lot of things, even for the voting process. A week later is when we had our first case of COVID. And then to see what happened to the community then. I bring up that date and I bring up that time because I really was getting my foot in the door as a political operative and also as a government worker within the mayor's office, and the stuff that I saw. And one of those pieces was to see people that either represented those who were Black, those who were brown, those who were immigrants, and to see some of the conversations that was had behind the scenes, and then to see what happened when the cameras were on or in public. And I saw so many lies, and these were people that were the community leaders. And based on being in politics, it's still a code of silence, no different than, I would say, the blue wall within the police, the wall that happens with preachers, pastors that commit atrocities within their own churches. Politics, we can just go down the line. There was a code of silence. But the reality is that it made me see people very differently. Even to this day, that there's people that folks will vote for that will probably be in very, very high seats, probably be senators, possibly even run for presidents one day, that tell great speeches on a national level. But I also know the backdoor conversations that involve money or what they're not going to do unless this is done. and it really does make me see people's characters very differently. Now, what I will also say, so that we're clear, is that there's plenty of people that I helped get in office that I believe are truly exactly who they are, and they've went in there the same way, and I'm very appreciative of them. But I'm also very clear that there's some people that I met that I think at the end of the day you have to have some form of ego to run for office, but their ego definitely has went even higher and bigger, to where I think it's only about them, and they use the word community or family as a substitute for still talking about them. And I think a lot of that happens because for a lot of them, they have underdog stories. And these underdog stories brings up trauma that's still not being processed or dealt with. And so growth can't happen. And because of that, they swallow those pills. They swallow that toxicity to the point that they then become the bully because they wanted to bully the bully. But the only problem with that is now not only did they bully the bully, they become bully to other communities that might represent that bully, who they themselves were never bullies at all. And so I really do want more people to really think about their own trauma that they dealt with, and that just because you're a hammer doesn't mean that everything's a nail. Sometimes you have to get back to the reality of understanding your function as maybe a hammer. It's for the nail, but not everything is a nail because of that. Understand what your purpose is for that moment, and then when it's not that, rest and chill. And so I'll stop right there with that.
I guess one final thing, because I realized we didn't address it, but we were talking about our mutual friend, Muhammad Shukri. And one of the reasons that I wanted to interview you was the piece you wrote, They Ain't Black. Can you just give a last final thought, and forgive me for taking more of your time, about divides within the immigrant community, the Black community, and make a case. I'm assuming you're going to make the case, but I think I know you well enough to do this, that we should be in solidarity with one another, and where our specific interests might diverge from time to time, the overall arc is still against white supremacy and systems of systemic racism.
I watched a snippet of an interview not too long ago from an Afro-Cuban actor who's born in actually he was born in Cuba, but moved to New York, or moved to America, and he is Black and Latino. And the interviewers kept on trying to push, like, "Are you Black? Are you Latino?" And they could not fathom the piece that he was both. And so a lot of times what I see within the Afro diaspora, when we start talking about Blackness, is that, and I like his response to what they said, is that the only difference between us is where the boat landed compared to where the boat first picked us up at. We all come from the continent. And I think because of the tribal issues that happened even there, it sent some of us onto that boat because we lost the war. And from there, those boats that were used by white colonialist colonizers took those boats to different places, whether that be Brazil, whether that be Cuba, whether that be the Latin Americas, or whether that was Virginia, or if it went down to Mississippi or to Alabama, one of the biggest plantation systems that there were. But what I'm very clear on is that based on geographic location, there were certain things that we picked up about ourselves in our community, that when we connect those with other communities, whether that be a person that's Black and from the South, or Black and from the North, or Black and from the Latin Americas, Black and from South America, there still is that connection that we still all come from the continent. Unfortunately, we're seeing so many disconnects. I'm hearing, again, Afro-Latinos that people in America, for some reason, just automatically assume that we're the biggest Black community outside of Africa. And the reality is that we are a smidget of the Black population. When we talk about the Afro diaspora, Latin America is killing us when it comes to Black folk. I think media has caused it to where, because we don't see Black Latinos a lot, we just automatically assume that if you're not Black here, then you're just not Black. You're not Black there, and that's wrong. We keep letting these media depictions of us tell us who we are. No different than when we see these media depictions within the continent of Africa that makes it seem like everybody's in sub-Sahara desert area, that they're very poverty in those areas, when the reality is when I just came back from Cape Town, South Africa, I'm just seeing, the beaches. You're seeing cities. You're seeing a lot of civilization, and no different than probably going to Nigeria, no different than going to Ghana, no different than going to Somalia or Kenya. These depictions has made it seem as if anti-blackness is also lives within Black folks. One of my good friends, your good friend too, is Muhammad Shukri. Muhammad is from Somalia. When he came to America, he lived in Atlanta. From Atlanta, he moved up to Tennessee. A great Muslim man. It's a great man in general overall. But there would be people that would assume because he's Somalian that he is not Black. And Muhammad is very clear. Is a HBCU graduate, is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I don't know how much Blacker you can get with a lot of the experiences that he has. And on top of that, is a person that is really big on business development, economic development within his community, within Nashville, and helps out other people all around, not only from the Somalian community, not only from the Muslim community, but just the community in general. And for somebody to try to push and say that he's not Black is obviously somebody that does not understand or know their history and doesn't want to and doesn't have a love for their community. And so I'll leave it with that. Where you can find me, I am definitely on in Instagram. You can look under the name Eric Elton Jr. I'm on Facebook under the Eric Brown Venture. I have my page Eric E. Brown Jr. there, and then I'm on Substack, so you can look up Eric E. Brown Jr. on Substack, where you'll find a lot of stuff. But I have a lot of big things that's happening this year for me, to where I'm really really trying to anchor myself in being a storyteller, being a speaker, and consistently always going to be the community builder. But I'm definitely trying to push more of the speaking and the storytelling.
God bless you, and it's so good to catch up, man. Take care.
Likewise.
And have a good one.
Issa. Okay. Issa? Yes. Issa Galloway.
Issa Galloway.
Issa Galloway.
Issa Galloway.
Issa Galloway, convert to Islam, defines the mission.
Kind of a show that will put people on the edge of their seat.
Because it leads to the future, a more sophisticated approach.